Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back. We have Cam Taylor joining us here today from British Columbia in Canada. He's a grief coach at the Good Grief Journey and is here to talk more about his support, his services, and of course, guidance to help you along the way. And especially, very hard time now during the holidays as well, where I think extra help could be needed on so many different levels. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Good to see you.
You too. And before we get into, loss, what it is, and of course, how it comes in many forms, let's just start off with just a little bit about yourself for new people tuning in today.
Yeah, it's my name's Cam, and I've lived in Canada all my life. And one of the things that I've learned through various incidences is that I'm desperately in need. I've been in need of learning how to deal with my losses and with my struggles.
Mhm.
So I have two adult children. I'm married to my wife, Jean, and I really enjoy coming alongside people that have experienced loss or are helping people that are experiencing loss because I think I've been in both of those shoes and I want to be able to provide that support. And I get a lot of joy from doing that.
Right. Well, thank you for being here. And let's get started, right? Because loss, you say, comes in many forms. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, from your experiences, what various phases of loss are there out there that we could be dealing with?
And I think this is important to look at multiple phases of loss because a lot of times people will go through experiences in their lives and they won't realize that grieving is actually needs to be a part of their experience to truly heal from that. So let me give you five phases. And the one that is very obvious, which is what people think of right off the bat is the loss of a loved one. And that is definitely, I would say, one of the most difficult losses, type of losses that we have to grieve. I've been through that myself. My wife died in 2020, just when COVID was happening. It's interesting with COVID, there was all kinds of losses that actually happened during that whole season of our history as well. But loss of a loved one is one phase that's a very challenging loss. Another loss that I've experienced that you might have is loss of identity. And this can happen for a lot of reasons. Yes, it happens when a loved one dies. When my wife died, I lost this identity as a husband and as a married person. I had to struggle with that. But there are people that lose their jobs. They go into retirement. They lose a responsibility or a role that they once had. They lose identity and they have to go through this season of letting that go and grieving that loss. Another phase of loss is loss of safety. This is where there's traumatic events or even, someone breaks into your house and steals your stuff, like you feel violated and there is this loss of safety. I don't feel safe in my home anymore, or it can happen in relationships. We have to process that, and that's a part of grief is a part of the processing. A fourth one, loss of autonomy. I see this happening with those that are aging, that are, as they get older, they lose the ability to even look after themselves. Aging parents are a part of my generation that a lot of us are dealing with. How do we help those in our lives that are losing their autonomy? And that's a form of loss that needs to be grieved. And one final one that I want to mention is loss of dreams or expectations. We see this especially in athletes, for example. They have a major injury and their whole future comes crashing down in front of them. Don't just tough it out and push through it. Take time and grieve the loss of that dream, of that expectation. So there's a few that I think we all just need to be aware of. Loss requires grief on some level.
And you say that people a lot of time also say there's the saying that time heals all wounds. Is that really true?
Well, I'm not sure what you think, but I do not believe in that statement.
No.
And so let's talk about time. It's interesting that I've heard it said, those of you listening have probably heard it said that just give it time and everything will be fine. Well, that's just not typically how it works. Let me reframe this whole idea of time and how it relates to the grieving journey. I really believe that it's not
Mm,
just time alone that helps people to grieve. They need some other things to go along with them. They need empathetic witnesses, people that will listen to them, will validate their grief. They also need the right ideas to help them think differently about their life and their future and the sense of purpose and all of that. But time alone does not help you grieve. It's time well lived that will help you grieve. There's actually two Greek words for time. One is chronos, and that is chronology, time that you measure on a clock. And that's not the only kind of time you need when you're grieving. Yes, you do need time, and it does take time,
yeah.
absolutely. But you need the other kind of time, and that's the word kairos. Kairos time is not time you measure on a clock. It's more something that is experienced. It's more time that is measured more in terms of moments that we reflect, moments for us to sit with our memories. And it's when we take that kind of time, time that cannot be measured, time that cannot be kind of parsed into months or years, and we're able to kind of reflect and receive support
Yeah.
and to be held safely in people's lives so that we can actually be with what we're feeling and travel not at any particular speed, but we can travel step by step forward through our grief, through our feelings, through our thoughts, to a place where we can finally get to the place of acceptance, of new
Yeah.
purpose, new identity, and all that goes
Hmm.
with that. So, time alone does not heal, but time with people, empathetic people, with the right ideas, will eventually lead to healing and the ability to discover how to live again after your loss.
Yeah. I'm more of, people say, time heals all wounds. It doesn't heal all wounds. My opinion. Can it help? In most
Yeah,
cases, I
yeah,
would agree. It does help a little bit, but still, like I know you've had your share of loss. You share that
yeah.
with us. I've shared my mother was probably my biggest loss, the past 8 years, but it does
Hmm.
get a little better each day. And yeah, and body's different, mental, physical being, everyone
Yeah.
process and handles things differently. So I just also want to say if someone says that to you, they said it to me. Can I share a story with you, Cam? If you don't
Yeah,
mind. My
yeah,
mom
for sure.
passed away a week before Easter
Yeah,
in
totally. Go ahead.
2017. Thank you, thank you. Well, she passed, and my mom before she died, she said, "Joel, please,
Mm,
I was not
well,
dating
yeah.
my son's father. She said, please just go there for Easter, bring the kids there, just do that for me." So what did I
Mm,
do? And in her honor,
mm,
I dressed the kids. I brought them to the house, and my
mm.
son's father's mother, so his grandmother says, "Oh, the outfits,
Okay.
they're so wrinkly. You didn't iron them?" And I said, "I buried."
Oh,
I said, "No,
yeah.
I burnt my mother yesterday. She was cremated." I said, "No, I did not get to iron my kids' outfits." She's like, "Oh,
Wow.
well, she's in a better place now anyway." And that's exactly how she said it to me. So the insult with,
Wow.
"Oh, my kids have wrinkly clothes." Are you kidding me? I went through a week of the loss of my mother after caring for her for a year and a half in my home with a 2-month-old and a 2-year-old by
Yeah.
myself. And for her to say that, I was so upset. My mom's in heaven watching down, and I'm like, "Mom, you made me come here." I said, "All right."
Wow.
And then I stayed for like a half hour and then I left because I'm like, I
Yeah.
came. You didn't tell me how long I had to stay. But you
Yeah.
can't, it's just,
Exactly.
but till this day, that sticks
Mm.
with me. I'll never forget those words from her. And I don't really speak to her much at
No,
all. And how do you say that to someone? Oh,
no.
she's in a better place. And yeah, so you got to be careful who you're around because not always do you have the right people supporting you.
Yeah.
And sometimes you think family and friends are best. I think Cam Taylor's best. I think it's better to be with a neutral party who's empathizes,
Yeah.
who's gone through this.
Exactly.
And what's your opinion on this too? Because when you were grieving, and you still are, I'm sure, but who did you turn to?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. And, it comes to mind. There's a statistic that I tell this to my groups when I'm leading them through the grief journey, is the law of thirds, or it's this a third of the people are going to be empathetic. They're going to listen to you. They're going to support you. A third of the people are going to be neutral, and a third of the people are going to be toxic. And it's interesting going around that room, people are saying that's true. That is true. That number seems to sum it up, right? So what's the summary from that? Hang out with the first third and do your best to try to quickly get through your time with the neutral and stay away from the toxic. And I totally can relate to that. I had one time this was it was when my wife's diagnosis had just been discovered of kidney cancer. And it was already, by that time, very serious, stage 4 cancer. And I was out in the neighborhood. And this, really what we're talking about here, what not to say, right? The people there, I said that my wife, and they knew her, has kidney cancer, and they just jumped into this story of a relative that went down to some clinic down in the US, and they're doing so much better now, and they found the solution for this. And I put it this way, I gave them a piece of my mind I couldn't afford to lose, to be honest. But I learned a lesson. I learned a lesson that I think they were in that 1/3 that I need to not talk to really so much, right? Yeah, so it happens, and I'm hearing these stories all the time. People are not all receptive to your story. They don't all want to hear it. So you have to find the people that will actually open up and listen to you for sure.
Well,
Let me
also,
just
go ahead.
give a few more. No, go ahead. No,
No, I was
you
just
tell
going to say
me.
about supporting others, some of the things you shouldn't say and should say. Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I kind of piggyback on what, and I so much appreciate your story. And it's interesting, even the telling of those stories is a part of our journey.
Yeah.
And regardless of where you're at and even your grief journey, like if people can just listen to our stories and to the experiences we have. But let me give you a few more things not to say. If you are in that position where you're trying to figure out what do you say to someone that's grieving, a lot of times people are so scared to say the wrong thing that they stay away and say nothing. Well, I don't think that's the solution, but there's two sides to this. Here's what not to say, and I'll give you a few things to say, just so that you can go away from this conversation and, okay, now I know what to say. Don't just tell me what not to say. But don't say, I know how you feel, because you do not know exactly how they feel. You may have had a loss in your life, but you will never be able to put yourself, you cannot be in that person's shoes. So just don't bother saying it. There's other things you can say instead, which I'll come back to. You know, older, let's say my father, he passed away at 92. And if somebody comes up to me and says, oh, he lived a long life, and kind of put a positive spin on it, that didn't sit well with me. Yes, he lived a long life. I can say that, but you can't say that. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. The person who's grieving can say a lot of things, but when you're supporting a grieving person, don't say they lived a long life or she was so young or whatever. Or another one, people often want to do something for you, and instead of saying, if you ever need anything, just let me know. That's not always helpful. Why don't you say something like, let me turn it around on this one. Can I buy you $100 skip the dishes or DoorDash? Give specific offerings of things to people instead of just offering random help that isn't specific. Another one, here's another thing not to say when they come in, when you're coming into their life and they seem like they have their life put together, don't say to them, you're holding up so well. You have no idea how well they're holding up. They may be putting on a huge mask, and inside they're absolutely devastated. So don't say that. Don't say that at least you have one parent left, if in fact one of their parents dies. And that's also, I've heard this said, I've not heard it myself, but people that say, well, at least you have two other children. Like those kinds of comments are just so hurtful and not very helpful. So there's a few of things not to say. I'll give you a couple of things that you can say. One is, it is okay to say, I'm so sorry for your loss. That line does get a little bit, has got a little bit tired, I think, for some people. But I think it's still appropriate to offer your, to say that you're sorry. Things like, my heart is with you, and I feel with you for your loss. My heart hurts for you. That's that works in most cases. And this one, depending on kind of your perspective, you could say you're in my thoughts. And if you're a praying person, I'm praying for you. And you also want to make sure that that person is receptive to that. So that's just a couple of comments there. But, I just want you to know that I care is another way to say an empathetic comment that's actually words that shows them that you legitimately care. So there's a few ideas. Hopefully some of those can land for you and you can use those next time you're talking to a grieving person.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And then you also mentioned the word empathy. Let's talk. What is empathy exactly? Could you share that? And let's talk a little bit about, empathy, about how it's, how do I say this? It's really important, I should say, right? And sometimes there's empathy blockers out there. So if you want to just touch
Mhm.
upon that, thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Empathy, let me tell you what it is. Empathy is really being able to come alongside somebody and feel what they feel. And what I like about what Brene Brown said about this, she said, you don't have to have had the same experience to have empathy. But what you want to be able to do is tap into the same feeling that is the feeling they're having. If it's abandonment or loss, if you've had a certain kind of loss, tap into
Hmm.
your own feeling and just approach them from that place. So it's really a heartfelt connection with the person and a not sympathy. Sympathy is more of condescending. It's more having pity on people, which does not sit well with people that are grieving. I don't think it sits well with anybody, but
No.
especially when you're grieving. So empathy is just coming alongside of them and just being with them. So what is it then that blocks that? Now, there are a lot of things, and some of these I didn't even realize they were going to block empathy until somebody pointed it out to me. So let me just touch on a few of them. One is probing questions block empathy. If somebody shares, oh, I've just lost my husband or my parent, or if you're all of a sudden, well, how did it happen? And who is involved? And what did the doctors do? And that's an empathy blocker because your goal is, if there's a goal to put it in those terms, you
Yeah.
just want to hear what they want to share. You don't want them to take you on this journey of discovery. That's not the place for that. So that's
Yeah.
one blocker, probing questions. Another one is, I've already said it before, is sympathizing. And that is where you say things like, oh, it's going to be okay. Well, for starters, you don't know if it's going to be okay. And that's kind of a patronizing comment, not helpful. So sympathizing blocks empathy. Instructing, and this is what my neighbors were doing, is they were kind of telling me what my solution was to my problem. And that could work with grief for sure. It can work with a lot of things, but empathy is being able to not be this great teacher of wisdom because I've been through a lot and I can teach you how to grieve well. No. Now, yeah, people come to me because I do teach about grief, but I lead with empathy and I only help them think about their grief when they're good and ready for that and when they're asking for it. As a supportive person, someone that's companioning somebody else in grief, don't instruct them. Don't be their teacher. Another one is diverting and withdrawal, and we see this a fair amount with people they get sort of queasy around grief. They can't talk about it. So instead of letting that person tell their story, they change the topic. They change the subject. Well, what about that sports team or whatever is on their minds? That shuts down their ability to really grieve, and that's an empathy blocker. Have you heard enough blockers? I've got a couple more here.
Yeah, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Another one is arguing, And
Ah,
this may sound,
mm,
it may sound like, do people do this?
hmm,
Yes. If somebody makes a comment, it's interesting. This is where I try to help people that are listening and companioning grieving people is you may have a different kind of view of even death. Like what if somebody says,
hmm,
yeah, my loved one, I'm missing them, but they're going to come back, pretty soon as a dog that somebody will have in their home or whatever. Like it doesn't matter if you agree with them or not
yeah,
in reincarnation or whatever their belief is. You just listen. You don't argue. You don't try
yeah,
to set the record straight. It is
yeah.
not what this is about, right? Another
Ah,
one is really landed for me and correct was a correction for me is one is advice giving, kind of touched on that. If you think you have some suggestions, oh, I can't sleep, I have no appetite. You don't all of a sudden jump in with advice. Well, have you tried this? Or what about this diet? Or
mm-hmm.
no, it doesn't help. A grieving person just wants to share. They just want to tell their story. And another one that I had to be reminded of is telling your story can actually be a grief blocker. I know that was a shocker to me. And because I had a great story of loss. So I thought initially this would be such an encouragement. And I actually was companioning a gentleman who had lost his wife. But I had this training before I actually was doing this companioning with him. And I realized, you know what? It's not going to help him for me to tell him my story of loss. If he asks me, why am I doing this? I learned to say, I'm doing this because I lost my wife to cancer 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to help others with their loss. Tell me more about your wife. And using that strategy of you can say a little bit, but go back to their story. That's empathy. And that is not empathy blocking if you keep doing that.
Wow. Wow. Hmm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. And during this time of year, um, loss, grief, I feel like it's just it echoes, right? I mean, you hear the
Yeah.
music, the Christmas, you walk into the store and there's just so many beautiful memories and music, and it makes you think
Mhm.
about those that you love, and it makes you think about it. Just it can put you in a really happy
Yeah.
mood or in a really sad mood, especially now. But as we
Yeah.
know,
Totally.
grief is all the time, every year of the season. Every year, I
Yeah.
should say, every day of the year, in every season.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I know we talked a bit about, at this time of the year, the holiday season, how do you tackle that? And some of the things I
Great.
remember from our last conversation were just things like if you are grieving, for you to be able to, create some new memories of your loved one. Maybe it's create a special craft or have a special dish at a meal or go on a particular trip. I know families that are going on trips with their loved ones and they're creating special memories with those who are in their family. When they're on that beach, they're going to feel the empty space sitting beside them. But what they're actually doing is they're moving forward and creating these new memories. And I think the other thing you need to do is you need to be kind to yourself at this holiday season and not just try to do everything you've always done because you're not into it perhaps,
Yeah.
or you can't do it. So to be able to give yourself permission to do things differently and to have more time to rest, but to find people that you can connect with and get the support that you need at Christmas time, holiday season, so that you are able to one day at a time just kind of walk through the memories and the feelings that you'll have at this time of the year for sure.
Mm, yes. Hard time. And also, just to touch upon that, what are, some ways to hold grief in life at the same time? Anything you suggest? Anything else? I mean, obviously talking to someone like yourself, of course. And what are some little things that we could
Yeah.
do?
Yeah, and I want to set this up just with a quote by an author that really meant a lot to me when I was grieving. Her name's Christina Rasmussen. I want to get this quote right, so I'm just going to read it for you. The longer we have been grieving a loss, the harder it is to start living again. This is one of the reasons why I wholeheartedly believe we must invite life and grief to walk hand in hand. If life doesn't escort grief back to joy, then it takes us much longer to get there, if we ever do. Well, how do you do that? Just here's a few ideas. And you're right, we've been talking about some things to do, but I think one very practical and tangible way to hold life and grief at the same time on this journey is to be present where you are. Be present exactly where you are. And if you're feeling devastated, sad, angry, be fully present with that. Now, on the flip side, and this is hard for people sometimes, if you're in a room and a friend of yours is presenting you with their newborn baby, maybe it's a new niece or a neighbor's baby, and you're starting to well up inside of you this joy for this new baby, be there. Be present in that moment. And don't worry that you're dismissing the sadness, because you'll go back there. But that's what it means. That's one way to describe hold grief and life at the same time. And I think the other thing that's so important is to make sure that you're stepping back and you're spending time reflecting on how you're feeling, how you're thinking, all the things that are going on in your body. And I am such a big believer in journaling. And this was one of the key ways that I was able to learn how to hold grief and life at the same time. Because I could write down 5 things I'm grateful for, and that started to increase my joy level. But then I could write out how I was feeling and what I was struggling with, and the decisions I needed to make. I could reflect and be with both of those and process those things and make some progress in the meantime. So those are just some ideas how to hold both of those hands in that journey, in the grief journey. And that's what I believe really makes it a good journey, a thorough journey that helps that to happen.
Wow. Thank you for that. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. And I would like to have you tell our listeners how we can contact you. Thank you for the great conversation today.
Yeah, a simple way to get a hold of me is go to my website, Good Grief Journey, all one word, goodgriefjourney.com. And on there's a couple of ways you can access myself, some of the materials. If you are supporting somebody who's grieving, I'd really recommend download and sign up for the 7-day companioning course. It's totally free, and it will really walk you through how to show up as a supportive person. If you are grieving, there's 50 ways to grieve your losses, a PDF you can download. There's also my book, Unlocking the Mystery of Grief, which I'd recommend. There's a free section you can download. Just have a taste before you buy it. And if you'd like to speak to me, I would welcome you reaching out. Send me an email, send me contact information, and we can set up a time to talk, and I'd offer that to you as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. All right. Have a fantastic day. And hopefully we will connect again before the holiday. Thank you so much for helping so many.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.